Good evening and a warm welcome to the East Anglian Book Awards 2020 showcase event. Coming to you online this year, yet another first in a year that has been full of them for most of us. I'm Holly Ainley, the book buyer for Jarrold, and I'm honoured to be presenting this event this evening on behalf of all the partners of the East Anglian Book Awards, Jarrold, the Eastern Daily Press and the National Centre for Writing, and our generous supporters, the UEA Faculty of Arts and Humanities and the PACCAR Foundation. While we're not in the same room tonight, I hope you'll agree that by joining together online, we are still able to share in the excitement and the joy of hearing new writing and celebrating the amazing literary talent within the East of England. Because that's what this is all about. And in a year we've all faced great challenge and change, it feels more important than ever to recognise the diverse creativity and community in our region and the way that this enriches and connects us all. This is the 13th year of the East Anglian Book Awards, and we received over 100 entries from more than 60 publishers. A big thank you to every author and publisher who submitted work. While it feels like so much has shut down this year, this is proof that East Anglia's literary livelihood is alive and kicking. So, on to the authors and their brilliant books. The shape of the evening looks something like this. We will have the pleasure of hearing from each of the category winners as I ask them some brief questions and each will read from their work. We'll then hear the results of two further awards that are integral to the East Anglian Book Awards. The Book by the Cover Award is administered and chosen each year by the East Anglian Writers Group. We'll hear from the chair of the group, Alison Presley. And the Exceptional Contribution Award, recognising those who have made an outstanding impact on the literary culture of East Anglia, will this year be presented by Peggy Hughes, Programme Director at the National Centre for Writing. And of course, we'll round off the evening by revealing which of the category winners has won the overall East Anglian Book of the Year 2020. A reminder that the overall winner receives a cheque for £1,000, generously donated by the PACCAR Foundation. And this year, in addition to their trophies, each of the category winners will also receive a copy of Jarrold 250 A History, which is a new book written by local historian Pete Goodrum, celebrating Jarrold's 250th birthday this year. Before we start, I want to say a huge thank you to our category judges this year. They're largely, but not all, from the University of East Anglia's School of Creative Writing. I know there was a lot of reading involved, thanks to the volume of entries we received. And I know it was a tough decision for all of you. So we're very grateful. And I'd also like to say congratulations on behalf of all the partners to every shortlisted author. I know that the variety and depth of your work meant that judging was also a really pleasurable experience. Kicking off proceedings this evening, we are joined by the winner of the 2020 Biography and Memoir Award. This category was judged by Alex Hammond from the University of East Anglia, and the winner is Suffolk-based Charlotte Amelia Poe with their powerful memoir, How to Be Autistic, published by Myriad Editions. Welcome, Charlotte, and congratulations.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's an honour.
I think it's fair to say, Charlotte, that you're no stranger to winning prizes. And in fact, winning the Spectrum Art Prize in 2018 was where this book began. I wonder if you can tell us the story of how it all happened.
Sheer luck and chance, really. Just receiving the right email at the right time and going with it, really. I got an email, I can't even remember how, and decided to enter the Spectrum Art Award. And I won. I was really interested in spoken word poetry, and I just typed out this big long script and recorded it. And I really don't understand how it happened, but it did, and I'm so glad that it did.
In the book, you describe your autism as not something I can turn off. It's everything that I am. And I think it's this honesty and this understanding of yourself that's clearly really struck a chord with so many readers. And I know you've received a lot of praise for giving a perspective on autism that we've never really seen before. And I wonder why you think that is, why we've had to wait so long to hear such a genuine, honest voice like yours.
I'm really surprised by it. I really didn't think people would be able to relate to it, and I'm kind of a bit disappointed that people still do relate to it now, because I thought it would be something that, it's 15 years ago now, I thought it would be a thing of the past, but I still get people messaging me telling me how relevant it is. And as for why, people say it's sort of brave, but I think it's just sort of a bit stupid enough to just be like, this is what happened, and I'm probably going to regret this, but I'm going to tell you everything, because I've been sharing my life on the internet since I was a very young teenager, and this isn't any different, really. Didn't really realize so many people would be reading it. So
it's amazing that you did. And do you ever think about the fact that this might sort of be helping other people to other autistic people who might sort of not have their own voice yet? Do you think it's perhaps helping other people to unlock something?
I've had so many people telling me they're getting diagnoses as a result of this, and people wanting to share their own stories, and I've been encouraging that. I've been like saying, yes, please use this as a jumping off point. Don't let this be the end of it. Let this be the beginning of something.
It's a really amazing thing you've done, really. So I wonder we talked about the fact that you won the Spectrum Art Prize with the sort of video version of this book, but what does winning a prize for your art or for your writing mean to you, and what does it mean kind of for your future creative endeavors?
It's validation. It means someone's listening, someone's out there. There's this like Bruce Springsteen song, Radio Nowhere. It says, is there anyone alive out there? And it's like, that's how it feels. It's like getting that back, and it's just knowing that people do relate to it, as hard as that is to sort of comprehend and understand. It's real. You said it struck a chord, and I still don't understand that, but I'm really happy for it.
That's fantastic, and we're so glad to have you on the shortlist and then as category winner this year. I think you're now going to give us a short reading at the poem from the book. So this is from How to Be Autistic by Charlotte Amelia Poe.
Okay, I'm not very good at this, so bear with me, but this poem is called Better. I read a line in a book recently that said, this is what better looks like for me. And better isn't really best, it's more surviving than thriving, you see. Sometimes you don't get to choose the path less travelled, or even the path of handy signposts and friendly guides. Sometimes it's hard enough just to reach the starting line, let alone to ramble. Whilst others wade through mud and rivers, filling their boots with cold and wet, laughing at nature and how the world makes them feel alive, there are loads of us who stay inside and start to forget the sun on their skin, or the way it felt to meet someone new without pretense or expectation. When the noise overwhelms and there's so much to see, because the world is sharp edges, too much for me. When late night car rides and half-hour conversations are as much as this muddled brain can bear. When you look at me and find that I'm not there. When you cut a hole inside my chest and tunnel past my spine and ask if you can see me now. And I ask if you can see through me now, sorry. As I bleed this unholy wine, you don't reply because you can finally see this is what better looks like for me. Sorry.
No,
I'm really not good at reading aloud.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. Next, we come to the award for fiction, judged by Amy Waller from the University of East Anglia. And I'm joined by the 2020 winner, Claire Wade, for her thought-provoking novel, The Choice, published by Orion. Hello, Claire, and huge congratulations to you.
Hi, Holly. Thank you ever so much. I'm delighted. It's amazing.
The Choice is described as a dystopian novel. Can you start by just telling us a bit about it and the story?
So it's about a world where sugar is illegal and baking is a crime, but it is so much more than a book about baking. It explores issues about the government's role in our decisions around health and diet and exercise. It looks at how societal pressure and individual peer pressure shapes and changes us and our behaviour. And it looks at the choices that we make around the things that are important to us, and when we decide to sit back and not do anything, and when we choose to fight for what we believe in.
It certainly is a powerful story. And I wonder, how did you go about getting this novel published? What was your journey from manuscript to finished book?
So my journey was quite untraditional. I expected to go the normal route of agent, publisher, book, but I actually entered the Good Housekeeping debut novel competition, and I won, which was fantastic. And part of the prize was signing with an agent and with a publishing deal with Orion. So I went from working really hard, trying to break into the industry, trying to get an agent, to suddenly overnight having everything I wanted, everything that I dreamed of.
Wow, that must have been an amazing experience. So you're no stranger to winning competitions either.
No, it's a very nice feeling. So it's gone from a book that exists because of a competition and now a book that's won an award. So I'm totally delighted about that.
Wow, there we go. Now, I know Claire already. She's an active member of the Jarrold Book Club. But Claire, I wonder if you might talk a little bit about the importance of reading and writing groups to your process, and what it means to be part of a literary community here in Norfolk.
It's been hugely important. I have ME. I was bedbound for 6 years, and one of the first things I did when I was starting to go out again was join a book club. And I've been a member of about 3 or 4 different book clubs around the city, and Jarrold's is my latest one. And being in a book club means you read books that you wouldn't normally read. So I have read a vast range of different styles, different genres, and that has helped shape the author that I've become. And as a result of knowing that I loved books and knowing that I wanted to write a book, I actually heard about National Novel Writing Month, which was how I started writing. And that's November, it's this month. And that was 10 years ago that I did my very first novel writing, and shortly after that I came up with the idea for The Choice, and I joined a local writers group which is run by Ian Nettleton, who actually does one of the courses for the National Centre for Writing now, and that was so helpful, writing and then sharing my work with other people, getting their feedback on my story, which pushed it in maybe a slightly different direction to the one that I'd originally intended. Originally, it was quite a light baking book, but their questions about the world and how it worked and how the government would involve the decisions about food and diet made me go deeper into the dystopian genre. So it has all been part of groups and other people, and sharing my love of books and my love of stories with other people that has helped me get to the stage of writing my book, finishing my book and getting it published.
Oh, thank you for sharing that with us. And now we're going to go to a reading from The Choice, which is the winner of the 2020 Fiction Award.
Chapter 1. It was impossible to ignore the shame box. The large transparent cube squatted on the tarmac to one side of the supermarket entrance. This morning it was occupied. Olivia Pritchard unlocked her trolley and fought to push it in a straight line towards the store. Beside her, Alice kept up a stream of small talk, her best friend's usual distraction technique. It normally worked. Olivia desperately wanted it to work. But today she couldn't focus. Her full attention was drawn inexorably to the poor woman who sat hunched in the box. Please don't let it be someone she knew, she thought. Other shoppers gathered around the box, watching, judging. Two little boys banged on the glass, leaving small smeared handprints behind. Olivia winced. This was no place for children. Where were their parents? The woman inside the shame box didn't look up. She just sat there, clutching the string of pearls around her neck, her fingers moving over the beads like a rosary. There was no prayer Olivia knew of that could make the situation any better. She tried to see without looking, to know for sure if the woman was a friend, but the prisoner's dark hair fell forward, obscuring her face. Was there a hint of familiarity in the tilt of her head, the slim curve of her shoulders? Seeing a stranger who had broken the law was bad enough, but a friend? Relationships change forever when you saw someone in the box. And Olivia had already lost too much. She couldn't lose any more. Her footsteps faltered. Alice reached out to rest her candy-pinked manicured hand over the top of Olivia's washing up chapped skin. I don't recognise her, Alice whispered, propelling Olivia forward. Keep walking. She nodded towards the two men in dark suits standing by the sliding doors, customer service agents. They stood ramrod straight, dominating and oppressive, and motionless except for their eyes. They scanned the shoppers, their gaze never settling for long, if you were lucky. Steps heavy with a familiar lethargy, Olivia felt the prickling sensation of being watched, but Alice wouldn't let her slow. They passed through the intrusive body scanners and entered the fluorescent glare of the supermarket. First trial over.
Wow, thank you very much, Claire.
Thank you.
Next, we have the 2020 award for the general non-fiction category, judged by George Mackay of the University of East Anglia, and its winner, a novelist, traveller, scriptwriter, photographer, Jeremy Page, with his book New York to California, published by Propolis. Thank you for being with us, Jeremy.
Thank you, Holly.
Perhaps more than most on the list, your book has East Anglia at its heart, its very core. As in the book, you journey through the landscape, and it results in this sort of heady mix of travelogue, memoir, nature writing, and more. I wonder what came first, the idea for the book or the journey you describe in it?
I would say what came first was definitely the ambition or the need to write about East Anglia. I think writers have quite an enduring relationship with their homeland, and sometimes that's a relationship that draws them back and sometimes it drives them away. I soon realized it was quite a complicated thing to write about East Anglia. It means so many things. It's a very odd place. It's a very beautiful place. To some people, it's a beautiful sunset view on the beach, and to other people, it is maybe a pile of muddy shoes on a tarpaulin at a car boot sale. Mm-hmm. So it felt very complicated in sort of the premise, and I made some rules with myself not to be whimsical about it, to be personal about it, and try to always keep in mind the relationship of what the landscape meant and the stories that came out of that landscape. Brilliant.
And you've touched on just there that you, within the book, traverse very different landscapes of the region. So there's coastline, there are cities, there's fenland, as you said. But you talk about finding what you describe as fragments of the place of East Anglia, but not the essence of it. I wonder if you could talk a bit more about this aspect of the book. And second to that, do you think you now know what that essence of East Anglia is?
Well, it was a very long journey that I took, and it seemed to be not just in terms of the length of it. It seemed to be a journey of depth, if that makes sense. So it was a kind of a vertical journey into the landscape, into the stories that come out of that, but also my family history, my own personal history. And I think what emerges from that kind of journey is not so much events along a line, but more like a constellation of things that you then have to make sense of. So I think the book was always going to be about fragments, a bit like sort of finding little bits of broken pottery or something and trying to imagine some kind of vase that it may have once come from. I think if I did the journey again, I would just see a whole other bunch of fragments, and I quite like that quality about it. As to you asked about the essence, I think that's quite a difficult question to answer. I think any of us familiar with East Anglia, I think we have the feeling of what the essence is of the place. It's something to do with the light and the space and the sky, and there's a certain quality of softness, I think, that you don't get anywhere else, certainly not in Britain. I personally was quite attracted to some of the sites that didn't really make sense, like when you're in the Fenland area, you get rivers that are above you, and then on your right hand side you've got a river below you. It doesn't make sense. And there was another site in West Somerton where there's a sort of a Norfolk giant is buried, and he's got this tomb, and it just doesn't seem big enough to contain the 7 foot plus body that it should have. So these things sort of lingered because they felt odd and strange and slightly beyond what you think is there. I was also attracted to the things that are gone. I wrote about the whales that have got washed up and that they're gone, and the space they leave behind feels quite loaded and special and unforgettable. I'm quite happy in a way that the essence did ultimately feel quite elusive for me. I don't think it's my position to say this is what it's all about, and I've always felt that when I finish a book, it's up for the reader now to kind of gather those fragments and then see what essence they have in it, and I think it belongs to the reader now.
I think that's a lovely metaphor, that idea of the broken fragments making up a vase, and that it would be slightly different each time for all of us. Thank you. And so now you're going to give us a short reading from the book, from your book, New York to California, which is our 2020 winner of the general non-fiction category.
Thank you. This passage takes place at night near the travel lodge at King's Lynn. In front of me, the river flowed thickly and without definition, deep in its channel of slimy black estuary mud. It smelt sharp and sour and full of salt, and I thought what a powerful presence a river is at night, passing by with such impenetrable volume, but something that couldn't quite be seen. Wasn't this what I was looking for, I reminded myself, crossing East Anglia searching for the not quite visible? Did this moment sum it up, to sit on a dark riverbank and feel the presence of something immeasurable passing by in front of me? When I got back to my room, I watched TV for a while. There was a program about a nightclub in Ibiza, but it felt like a transmission being beamed into this room from a distant planet. I recognized the colors and patterns on the screen, but they didn't seem to apply to where I was, currently lost in space. I switched it off and thought again about the giant Atlantic cod lurking in the freezers of the Brewers' Fair next door, like some mythical beast in a morgue, lured from its hiding place in the North Atlantic to a chest freezer in a red brick building on a semi-industrial unit on the outskirts of King's Lynn. How did it end up here? How did I also end up at this place tonight? I slept badly next to a roundabout that seemed to be spinning its cars and trucks around like a washing machine. It felt like I was trying to sleep by the side of a vortex, a slowly turning, never fading whirlpool that might yet drag me down.
Thank you very much, Jeremy Page. On to the History and Tradition category, jointly judged by Stephen Church and Rebecca Pinner of the University of East Anglia. And the 2020 winner is Imperial Mud, The Fight for the Fens by James Boyce, published by Icon Books. Hello, James, and congratulations to you.
Oh, hello, Holly, and thank you very much.
So you join us tonight from Australia, which is one advantage to a digital ceremony, us being able to speak to you directly. Your subject is the Fens here in Eastern England, and to some extent, how they represent changing British history. So I wonder why this area in this time period when you're in Australia?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I am a full-time historian and writer, but I'm mainly known for writing Australian colonial history books, sort of 19th century Australian history up till now. But my connections with the Fens go back to the 1990s when I was living and working in Norwich, which I know is not the Fens, but not so far away. And I was working as a social worker with elderly people in Norfolk, and just started to form connections with the country. There were a lot of old farm workers who I was working with, and hearing all those stories of the land, I think, started to form the connection. And then I found that my own ancestry, I knew about my father's ancestry, but I hadn't known about my mother's. Both my mother and my father's families come from the Fens. Wow. So obviously that was the beginning of the connection. But then really it was as I was reading some of the histories of the Fens and moving into becoming a full-time historian myself with my writing, I started to notice striking similarities between a lot of the history of what was going on and what was going on in other parts of the empire, including here in Australia. Obviously there were many differences as well, but there was the striking similarities between the two experiences of what was happening to local people, and the process of colonisation and the process of appropriation of their land. Over time, I started to think, well, look, I might have something to say here. There was a book started to emerge, and many years later, here it is, Imperial Mud.
Well, what a great answer. What does it mean to you to be winning this very regional prize with a book that has a very regional subject?
Oh, well, it's a great thrill for me, Holly. And look, this book, as I think a lot of regional history, I believe that to approach these great questions of our time, these sort of global questions, if you like, about how we live, with nature, live with each other with more respect. Often global histories, funnily enough, don't help us very much. They often can make us feel a bit disempowered, as if these great sweeps of history are going on that are far too big for any individual human to control. But when we get down and do regional history, when we start to explore how actual human beings lived in the land, lived with each other, defended their country, looked after their land, how they related to each other, then we can start to see that history is actually made by real human beings. You know, it's not just made by these big impersonal economic forces or these big things that are far too big for us to control. It's actually made by by choices of real human beings back in time. And then that gives us, I think, we can both draw strength from history, but also realise that we can shape the future. You know, nothing is predetermined. So I'm a great believer in regional history. I don't think regional history means that it's local, parochial, narrow. In fact, quite the opposite. It's through regional history, it's through studying our own place, you know, really going into the earth and communities tied to a particular area that we can understand these much bigger forces, and we can sort of start to influence the future and make for a better world. So regional history doesn't mean small, narrow-minded. Regional history means talking about home, how you make home, how we live in the land, how we've cared for each other, how we've related to each other, how we resisted forces that try and, you know, destroy that life. It's quite hope-filled, I think, potentially, regional history. So I'm very proud to have written a regional history, and I do it with humility in the sense that I know to write about someone else's home is a great responsibility. And though my ancestors come from, I don't live in the Fens, and so I do it with a great consciousness of that. But I do it with, I hope, a care and respect for the land and for the people, both in the past and today. That's something that means a lot to me. And I long to get back, and I long to be able to talk about the book in person with people of the Fens and people who care about the Fens. But this is a good substitute at the moment. So it's great to be able to talk in this way to people as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And thank you for treading so carefully and insightfully through our history, through our regional history. Congratulations again. And I think you're now going to give us a short reading from Imperial Mud, The Fight for the Fens. And that's the winner of our History and Tradition category 2020.
Thank you. Well, I'm actually going to read from the beginning of the book. Until a few hundred years ago, the rivers that flowed from central England to the North Sea metamorphosed into a wetland wilderness. They approached the Wash. Encouraged by low gradient and high sediment, they broke their banks to meander into countless and ever-changing channels, forming vast reed-covered fens, shallow bird-friendly lakes, and nutrient-rich summer meadows, more akin to the Amazonian delta than the ordered agricultural landscape that the Fens have now become. The drainage of about 1 million wild acres of marshland from the early 17th to the mid-19th century largely destroyed this extraordinary ecosystem, the ancient culture of its custodians. It is now difficult to imagine what has been lost. The Fenish relationship with their muddy home is as foreign to the modern mind as the traditional connection to country of the Aboriginal people of Australia. This book does not attempt to take an imaginative leap into a vanquished world, but to convey a little of what the land meant to the people of the Fens by documenting their heroic defence of it. Even today, most history books present Fenland history as one of technology overcoming the environment. This surprisingly resilient narrative is one of progress from an era of flooding, hardship, malaria and poverty to the enlightened age of drainage, flood control and economic and social development. Those who resisted the wetland destruction are reduced in such histories to old-fashioned country folk, hopelessly fighting the irresistible forces of history. What is taken for granted, even by those who lament what has been lost, is that market forces and technological progress inevitably win out in the end. And my book poses the different history, the history of that resistance, and poses the question that there was nothing inevitable about what happened. Thank you.
Thank you.
And can I say thank you to Jarrold and all the Eastern Daily Press and the Writers' Centre and all the sponsors too.
The Malpeat Children's Award was judged this year by B.J. Epstein from the University of East Anglia. And it's lovely to be joined by the 2020 winner, A.M. Howell, for her novel, The House of 100 Clocks, published by Usborne. Welcome, Anne-Marie, and
hello, thank you.
Do start by describing to the audience a little of this brilliant historical mystery novel and tell us who it's aimed at.
Yeah, so it's historical fiction and it's middle grade, so it's aimed at children aged 8 to 12. Although I must admit, I have had quite a few adults saying they've really enjoyed it as well. It's taken them back to books that they read in their childhood, which always makes me quite happy. And it's set in the city of Cambridge in summer of 1905. And it's about a girl called Helena, and she's whisked off to Cambridge with her clockwinder father, who goes to work for one of the wealthiest men in the country on Trumpington Street. And when they get there, the man makes Helena's father sign a contract to say, if you let the clock stop, you will lose all of your worldly possessions. And Helena has something very, very precious she doesn't want to lose, and that's her pet parrot called Orbit, who is the one lasting memory of her mother, who has very sadly passed away. So when Helena starts to investigate this strange thing that the man wants them to do, she discovers lots of really odd things are happening in the House of Clocks. There's a ghostly figure in the clock rooms, and strange notes are appearing on the walls that contain pictures of the Wright brothers' flying machines. So she has lots and lots of mysteries to uncover. So it's very full of secrets and full of mysteries.
Amazing. Oh, I can't wait for everyone to read it. Now, your first novel, which was called The Garden of Lost Secrets, also involves an old house, which is on an estate in that instance. And it also has a very compelling mystery at its heart. I wonder what is it about this kind of setting and premise that appeals to you? And secondly, do you think your own surroundings have any bearing on this?
I think definitely my surroundings have a bearing on what I write. And in fact, my first book, The Garden of Lost Secrets, is based on Ickworth Park Gardens, which is a National Trust property very close to Bury St Edmunds, which is where I live in Suffolk. Oh. And I used to spend a lot of time, I still do spend a lot of time, walking around the walled kitchen gardens. I would often wander around thinking, I wonder what life used to be here, what life used to be like here a long time ago, and started to do a little bit of investigative work and found out that they did lots of things in the First World War to contribute to society. They would give fresh fruit and vegetables to the military hospital in Bury St Edmunds. And these little seeds of ideas started to gather in my head. And I thought, maybe there's a book here, but I need to make it into a mystery. And the mystery sort of started when I found out about a gardener's notebook that had been rediscovered after 100 years being stuck behind the back of a filing cabinet. And that really triggered my imagination then. I thought, yeah, I've really got to start writing this. So I think it's objects and my surroundings that really give me my inspiration. And it was the same for the House 100 Clocks. I used to live in Cambridge and loved the city, would spend a long time wandering around the colleges and the buildings, imagining what life used to be like. And the story again was triggered actually by a visit to a clock museum in Bury St Edmunds. Moyses Hall Museum has some amazing clocks. And one day I was in there thinking, I wonder who winds the clocks and I wonder if they ever stop. And I suddenly had this spark of an idea that maybe I could write a story about clocks that must not stop. And then I thought, perfect setting would be Cambridge. And so it kind of started to gather steam and went from there. So I think all of my inspiration for my stories so far come from the East, because it's just got a rich heritage here. I think I've got enough stories to keep me going for quite a few years yet.
Good, lucky for us. And I wonder how the effects of the past 6 months, or this whole year really, might have affected your writing. Have they, for better or worse?
Yeah, I suppose it was quite tricky. During the first lockdown, it coincided with me receiving my first lot of edits back for my third book, and they were quite heavy edits. I had a lot of structural work to do, and I was in a bit of a spin thinking, how can I do this when all the world events were really weighing down on me? My kids were at home, they weren't at school, and I didn't think I'd be able to concentrate. But in the end, I actually just knuckled down and got on with it, and it was a real blessing. It really distracted me from everything that was going on in the world, and it was a nice escape. I think creatively it's great to disappear either into writing or reading a book at times. that are very stressful, and I find that certainly always really helps me. And it was kind of a bit of therapy, I think, just kind of disappear back into this historical world. And sometimes I didn't want to come back out of it. I was quite happy there, to be honest. So yeah, I think it was kind of a combination of things. I think it was hard, but at the same time, I think forcing myself to focus on my writing actually really helped me through this really difficult period.
Oh, that's really good to hear. Hopefully the same for lots of writers having that escapism. And I wonder, you just mentioned there edits on a new book. Can you tell us anything about what you're working on now?
Well, my third book is due out next summer with Osborne. It's historical mystery again. And the inspiration for this book is actually from my hometown of Bury St Edmunds. And it's two very magnificent buildings in the town that gave me the inspiration. I can't say too much more than that, other than the book is set around a major astronomical event in 1910.
Ooh.
So there's a bit of a clue there, but I can't really say too much more because it hasn't been announced yet.
Oh, well, congratulations again. And I think you're now going to give us a reading from The House of 100 Clocks, which is our 2020 Malpeat Children's Award winner.
Thank you. Yes, this reading is from chapter 12 of the book, and it's when my main character, Helena, is venturing out into the streets of Cambridge for the very first time. Helena eagerly drank in her surroundings as she walked. The smart tailor's shop displaying the black gowns and mortarboard caps she had seen students wearing as they hurried between buildings. She watched a horse-drawn tram rumble past, the boards around the top deck advertising soap and coal and carriages for hire for weddings and funerals. A man on the top deck of the carriage stood up and pointed down the street. He was wearing a smart hat. Helena followed his gaze. He could only be pointing at one thing, the enormous buff-coloured stone building with stained glass windows. Helena hurried onwards until she reached a small parade of shops. She stopped under one of the awnings and stared up at King's College Chapel. London had some magnificent structures, St Paul's Cathedral, the Houses of Parliament, but this was a different kind of building altogether. The spires, turrets and glinting windows reaching into the mist made her feel a little dizzy and ant-like. There, little reading from chapter 12 there for you.
Thank you. Last, but by no means least this evening, we come to the poetry category, judged for us this year by the poet Alison Winch. Thank you, Alison. The winner is So Many Rooms by Laura Scott, published by PACCAR. Hello, Laura, and many congratulations from all of us.
Hello, thank you very much. And I'm delighted to have won, so thank you very much.
This is such an achievement, not least because this is a debut collection. Your poems have already received glowing praise in the poetry community and beyond. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about your journey to publication, and have you always written poetry?
I wrote poetry when I was very young. Really young, when I was about 5. I used to write quite a few and take them very seriously and show them to lots of people. And then I stopped. And then I didn't come back to writing poems till really relatively late, quite recently. I mean, I started writing them probably in my 30s. And I kind of suddenly, I had this feeling that I'd suddenly found the thing I took seriously and the thing I wanted to do. And I was much more focused about writing poems than I've been about anything else I've done. So, and it kind of got slightly addictive, that if I didn't, and I still feel like that now, if I don't have a poem on the go, I feel kind of miserable and a bit pointless. So I kind of always want to be writing something. So yeah, now it feels like, I don't know whether I feel kind of a rush to keep doing it because I didn't start till relatively late. I don't know. That might be something that's going on.
And how did you go about shaping the selection for this, your debut collection?
Well, I had already had a pamphlet published with Rialto, and so some of those poems were transferred across, but it's obviously a completely different thing, a collection. And I had I'd always wanted to have a sequence because I had a feeling that it would be really nice to know that I simply had to write another poem about that thing. So this sequence emerged about Tolstoy, and that was one of the things that I used to shape it. And then there were a lot of poems about, it's just, I sort of look back at it, I suppose. I spread the poems out all over the floor and noticed that there were quite a few poems about trees, and there were quite a lot of poems about houses and rooms. And then I was lucky enough to have some help from Maniza Alvi, who is a poet who lives here, around here, and she was fantastic, and I showed her kind of ideas for sequences, and she helped me, and we built on those. So I did have some help. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, it all worked out brilliantly.
Thank you.
You've touched on some of the themes there in the collection, and there were lots of threads running through it. I sensed a preoccupation with a sort of a darkness, as I don't want to say death, but perhaps mortality. And I wondered if you're sort of aware of that as you write, or whether that's an unconscious thing.
No, I suppose I am quite aware of that. Yeah, I mean, the thing, it's funny because I started writing after my mother died, so I was quite preoccupied with death initially, and so that is in quite a lot of the poems. And I find it kind of, yeah, I'm really pleased that you picked up on that idea that there's a sort of darkness in them, because sometimes I think, you know, that's a kind of buried undercurrent in the poems, and then it might not be immediately obvious, but yeah, there is, and something that to be a sort of threat, to be, you know, that I don't know, some of the rooms in the house that appear in the collection, you know, you're not quite sure what's going on behind the doors, and sort of I'm interested in that idea of sort of hauntings, I suppose, and whether it's possible to go back to a childhood house, or how many other people have lived in that house, and whether their presence comes through. And I've always been slightly fascinated by that.
Yeah, and it's really elemental in a way. And also wanted to ask you, how important do you feel that a sense of place is to your writing, or to you, or perhaps these are one and the same?
No, I think it's very important for me, a sense of place, because when I look back through the collection now, I can so see and feel the poems that were written in response to being in Greece, for instance. And when I read those, you know, that it really seems to come from there. And then the poems that are about the house are mostly about the house I grew up in as a child. I mean, it's kind of refigured in certain ways, and houses that I stayed in, but it's the memory of place, and of the feel of landings and staircases and wallpaper. I just find it incredibly rich and reverberant, and it seems to just kind of seamlessly I can just steal it and put it into poems very easily, those sorts of images. That's where they seem to want to go, I suppose. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, kind of talk to you. Well, thank you for that insight. And I think you're now going to give us a reading.
Yeah.
And this is a poem from So Many Rooms, the 2020 category winner for poetry.
Thank you. I'm going to read So Many Houses, which is where the title for the collection comes from. When the grown-ups came, we scattered like dust into the skirting boards, and watched as they swirled and whirled and married the wrong people. So many rooms and so many houses, they had to spread the paintings thinly over the walls. We jumped on the beds and ran in the gardens, climbed all those stairs, curled our fingers around all those banisters, but we stood still on the landings and felt the floorboards warp under our feet. All those houses, but only one pattern, and they made it again and again, as if it were a song they loved and they had to play again and again. a song about a girl with skin as white as alabaster, who danced with a man with hair as black as night. A song about the child he gave her before he left her to find another who would give her 2 more. And as we listened to the song coming through the floorboards, it settled into us, and we saw ourselves spread out in a deck of cards across the table, a fan of children with different coloured hair. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. It has been such a treat to hear from our 6 category winners this evening, and I know you're all dying to hear who has won the overall Book of the Year award. We're going to keep you in suspense a little longer as we move on to the next 2 awards ahead of the big reveal, beginning with the annual Book by the Cover award. As I mentioned at the start, this is judged by the East Anglian writers, and here to tell us more is chair of the group, Alison Presley.
Thanks, Holly. Well, we've as a group, we've been going for about 60 years, I think now. I've been chair for about 10 years, and this is the 7th year that we have awarded this prize, the Book by the Cover Award. Because when we wanted to get involved with the East Anglian Book Awards, we realised that the major categories were already covered, and there wasn't any particular category or genre that we felt uniquely qualified to judge. So we decided to go for what is very important to every author and writer, and that is the cover design of his or her book. And it's really their calling card. As an author, you want people to notice your book and obviously ultimately to buy it. And one of the greatest tools you have is an eye-catching, exciting, enticing cover, because whether you're browsing in a bookshop or you're online, an eye-catching cover will catch your eye, and it might well result in a sale, which is the most important thing to any writer, believe me. It doesn't matter how often they say, I'm not in it for the money, it helps. So that's why we decided to award this prize. And we came up with some guidelines for our members to pick out the best cover from the shortlist. There were, the suitability of the cover to its category, typography and its legibility, imagery, the graphics or graphic or photographic or whatever, and the design and style and the overall visual impact, because it really has to catch your eye. Doesn't matter how worthy the cover image is, it's got to be eye-catching. So those are the categories and the criteria we came up with. And this is the 7th year, as I said, that we've awarded this prize. And in every single year, our members have managed to vote for 2-figure numbers of the 18 shortlisted books. There's never been fewer than 12 or 13 titles that have received votes, and this year was no exception. We managed to vote for 12 of the 18 shortlisted titles. I mean, some of them only got a few votes each, but the winner was a winner by a long chalk. Quite often it's fairly close between the first 3 or 4, but this time there was a clear outright winner, and then the next 3 titles were all joint second. So the winner this year is Ghostland, In Search of a Haunted Country by Edward Parnell, published by HarperCollins, and the cover art and design are by a young illustrator from the Midlands, I believe, called Richard Wells, and he specialises in illustrating Gothic tales and horror stories and ghostly, haunted tales. He's done this one very well, and it won by a long chalk.
Amazing. Thank you, Alison. Next up is the Exceptional Contribution Award. And here to present it and tell us more is Peggy Hughes, Programme Director at the National Centre for Writing.
Thank you, Holly. What a pleasure to be joining you all this evening. We're delighted at the National Centre for Writing to present the East Anglian Book Awards in partnership with Jarrold and the EDP, supported by UEA Faculty of Arts and Humanities and kindly sponsored by the PACCAR Foundation. It's my great pleasure to reveal the winners of this year's Exceptional Contribution Award, joining an outstanding array of previous winners. The Exceptional Contribution Award recognises those in the region who have made an outstanding impact on the literary culture of East Anglia. Previous winners have included the poet and critic Ronald Blythe, publisher Peter Stibbins, Marilyn Brocklehurst of the Norfolk Children's Book Centre, and Professor Christopher Bigsby of the UEA Literature Festival, now UEA Live. This year, we are celebrating for a first-time joint winners in Suffolk Libraries and Norfolk Library and Information Services. And this is in recognition of their absolutely fantastic work in supporting so many people during this extremely difficult year, whether through lending books and other media to keep us informed, entertained and hopeful, or the countless other key services the libraries provide. As I said, this is the first time the award has been given collectively rather than to an individual, and we hope that reflects the huge contribution that all of the library workers have made this year. Every branch in Norfolk and Suffolk will receive an exclusive poster in token of our thanks and our celebration. So it's lovely to be joined this evening by Sarah Hassan, who is Assistant Head of Service at Norfolk Library and Information Service, and by Bruce Leake, who's the Chief Executive of Suffolk Libraries. Hello to you both, and thank you so much for joining us on behalf of your libraries and your colleagues. Welcome.
Delighted to be here.
Thank you very much.
Could I start with you, please, Sarah? And Bruce, I'll put the same question to you in due course. But first of all, can you just tell us a little bit about the library service in Norfolk and how that they have adapted so brilliantly to these very complicated days?
Okay, so we had 47 libraries that went into lockdown and had to close very suddenly at the end of March. And in the week before we closed, we issued out something like 130,000 items just very, very quickly. And of course, that was an absolutely amazing effort by all our staff to do that. And we did things like we changed all our rules and regulations. We made it really easy for people. You know, we wanted people to have things to nourish them and support them through the lockdown. So that was the first thing that we did. And then, of course, we've developed a program, an online program, that I can go into some detail about later, to support people with their reading and also with isolation. So we've got a whole program of events that we now have. And of course, then we had a mammoth task of reopening our libraries from July onwards, and we got them all back open, bar one, plus a mobile library service.
Remarkable. Wow, what such numbers. Bruce, same question to you. How's it been in Suffolk, and how have your libraries and your colleagues adapted?
You know, we obviously had the same challenge as Norfolk Library Service. We took a similar approach, but during lockdown we decided to look at a different model for delivering our service, with very much a view to reaching out to people who were really in need. So we went to a virtual model where we delivered over 2,500 online live stream sessions that were creatively developed by various different staff members. We made over 6,500 calls to elderly and vulnerable people to check in on them and make sure they're okay, but also established a select and collect service so people could benefit from the great professional skills of our librarians as we selected either a selection of a certain genre of book or a selection based on some criteria they provided to us. And just tried to be as innovative as we could to get out there, serve the community and really, really make an impact to help people in what was a very, very challenging time, and obviously continues to be a challenging time for so many.
Yeah, wow, phoning people, that's absolutely wonderful. I mean, it's really shown actually that libraries are such hubs for their communities. I wonder if you could say a little bit, Sarah, just about what this quite complicated but absolutely vital way of working, what you will take forward as we go into, you know, another lockdown and beyond that into the future, what you'll take with you from this period, what's been learned and how that might adapt your future way of working.
Well, for sure, things will never be the same again, and we have learned huge amounts. And as Bruce said, we were also behind the scenes during lockdown, actually phoning people up, coordinating volunteers, making sure that people got food and medicine. So apart from anything else, we were actually redeployed into other work apart from library work. So there's all the learning that comes out of that, and about the fact that, you know, we are essential key workers, and you know what it means to be very suddenly redeployed into doing other things. So there's that whole part of it, and then there's just the whole thing about actually how do people read, how do they communicate with each other, what are their needs. And I know that we will be keeping our online offer, and you know, we'll be opening libraries as well, but you know, we will be making sure that we're connecting people through a Just a Cuppa session, or meeting an author session, or a book group that's online. And I know online isn't for everybody, but actually it is for a lot of people. So what we've learned is we've learned to brush up our digital skills, that's for sure, because we had to do that very rapidly. So, you know, we had to learn to use Zoom and find out which are the best platforms and make sure we do things within 40 or 45 minutes or whatever it is. So there's been a kind of lot of rapid technical learning. And then there's the whole skill of chairing and managing a group of Zoom viewers, and you know how you mediate that and how you safeguard it as well. And then our collections, you know, we have newspapers online, we have magazines online, we've got reading group books, we have books, e-audio, e-books. So managing those collections, and, you know, we bought exponentially more copies of all of those things in different formats as well. And I'm sure that we'll be holding on to nearly all of that actually in some form or other.
Wonderful. Bruce, could I ask you the same question really? What will you learn and what will you continue?
I think we learned the power of the diversity of our offer, as Sarah's highlighted already. I also think that we learned the power of the diversity of the skills and talents of our staff as well, who put themselves to all sorts of different challenges and really delivered for people when they needed it most. I think overall, and I think I'm still able to speak for Norfolk, but I think they share a similar ethos that libraries play a key role in supporting well-being. And Sarah mentioned making connections in the community, and we very much see that as a key role for us. So I guess some of the learnings for us are that we can certainly make even better use of the skills of our staff, but also to try and create a hybrid model that creates a much better understanding, even than we already have, of where those needs are, how we can meet them, whether it be digitally or physically, but just finding ways to interact with people, to help them make those connections, and mainly to help support them in developing positive well-being through the multiple services that we provide in the future. I think that's going to be really important given the challenges that the country's going to face when we do get to the stage of recovery, once we get through this horrible period of sort of in and out of lockdown. So I think libraries should be playing an absolutely fundamental role in that recovery. And I think, as Sarah's described, and as I've just tried to touch on, you know, we've all tried to do our part during this really challenging period. And I think the future for us is really, really positive in terms of making sure that we continue to engage with people and communities across our regions.
Absolutely. Oh, here. Libraries have played such a role. During lockdown, of course, we've seen, and I think generally it's been seen that people have turned to books for comfort, for solace, entertainment, for challenge. I wonder what books that you have turned to in these days. What have you been reading that's been getting you through this extremely sort of complicated time, Sarah?
Well, I did a lot of reading out loud to my mum because I'm living with her during lockdown and second lockdown, and went back to the classics. We did Pride and Prejudice and Jane Eyre, Mill on the Floss. That didn't cheer us up. And then some real funnies as well, like Diary of a Nobody and Cold Comfort Farm. So I kind of drew back into the past, into the classics actually, and you know, just people like Pooter kept us going, kept us laughing. And Flora Post, I mean, she's a woman for our time, isn't she? You know, she's a sensible woman, and that's what we need. So that was great and really funny. But on a lighter note, I've also been reading myself books by Michelle Paver. So I've just read Wakenhurst. I love Dark Matter and Thin Air. I think Dark Matter is my favourite one of hers.
Wonderful. I think Flora Post would be a remarkable lockdown companion, to be honest. I could think
She'd get you braced, wouldn't she?
you might. Bruce, same question to you. What's been keeping you going? What have you been reading?
I mean, I like quite an eclectic mixture of different types of reading, but I think I love John Simpson, so Unreliable Sources and any number of his books I always find really engaging. John Fowles, The Collector, I read recently. I'd read that when I was much younger, but it's one of my favourite books, so I took the time to read that again. To read boringly a lot of management books as well. One of my favourite ones, Turn the Ship Around, by David Marquette, is a great book, which is about an American nuclear submarine. It has lots of analogies about that, but it's all about sort of empowering people within your team and making the best of them. So that's a particular favourite of mine. And then I've got 2 young children, so I spend a lot of time sourcing dinosaur books, particularly for my 3-year-old. And my eldest, who's 7, loves Winnie the Witch. So we've been through, I think there's about, I can't remember how many of those are, about 14 or 15 of those, but we've read them constantly, and we have lots and lots of children's books in the house. So yeah, been really enjoying getting to grips with some of those with the lads.
Lovely. Winnie the Witch, absolute classic. What a banger. Brilliant. Lovely. My final question to you both is just simply, what does winning the Exceptional Contribution Award mean to you and your teams and your colleagues? Bruce, I'll come to you first this time.
I mean, what it means to us is it's just recognition for all of the hard work, the blood, the sweat, the tears that our team have put into trying to deliver in every single possible way they can for the community. And it's recognition of that effort and of those people. And, you know, I've only been doing this for 2.5 years at Suffolk Libraries, but, you know, every day, and it sounds a bit trite, but I wake up and I feel so proud of what we do, what our team does, and particularly of the flexibility, the pragmatism and the empathy that our team shows to people in the community, and the massive, massive impact they make. And, you know, we've spent a lot of time trying to get them to believe and understand that. And I think we're getting there. And I think this process of going through these lockdowns and all of the challenges that we faced, I think has helped them understand what they do for other people. And I think this is a great recognition of that. So that would be what I would say in answer to that question.
Thank you. And Sarah, to you.
Well, thank you so much. It's a real honour. And of course, I'm accepting it on behalf of Norfolk County Council that provides public libraries in Norfolk. And really for all the staff, because they're the ones who've been out there, frontline staff, meeting and greeting people in their protective masks, and, you know, making sure that people feel supported and safe and understand the one-way system and what we have for them. And, you know, they're doing that day in, day out, having to repeat those messages, working really, really hard. So it's a tribute to them, actually. And yes, we have online, but we've certainly got people. We've got, you know, it's the people that make the service in the end.
Wonderful. Well, once again, just from everyone and all the partners at the East Anglian Book Awards, we'd just like to thank you so much, you and your teams, for it all, really, just for the enormous effort to keep us all connected and entertained and everything during this very, very funny time. So it's our pleasure to present you with this year's Exceptional Contribution Award. Thank you both.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Now is the moment I know you've all been waiting for, where we reveal who has won the coveted Book of the Year award. A reminder that the winner has been selected from our 6 category winners by a panel of judges. These are Caroline Jarrold, Community Affairs Advisor for Jarrold, Peggy Hughes, Programme Director at the National Centre for Writing, Emma Lee, an editor at the EDP, and Hilary Emmett, Associate Professor of American Studies at the UEA. The prize is a cheque for £1,000, generously donated by our supporter, the PACCAR Foundation. The winner of the 2020 East Anglian Book Awards Book of the Year is A.M. Howell for The House of 100 Clocks.
Are you joking? Is that actually true? Oh my goodness. I can't it. I'm so thrilled. I'm absolutely stunned. I can't believe it. I'm absolutely thrilled. That's amazing. Thank you. I can't tell you how much that means to me, because this is just such a local award, and I just feel I'm just totally overwhelmed and overcome. Thank you.
Huge congratulations. The judges described your book as a powerful and evocative story of grief and loss, richly rooted in place, and one that combines vivid writing with a warm and relevant message for the times. An important and magical book, The House of 100 Clocks will be treasured by children and adults alike. Anne-Marie, I know this is a big surprise. Huge congratulations to you. As 2020 Book of the Year winner, how are you feeling? And is there anything else you'd like to say?
You've made me cry in a really good way. I'm very emotional, actually. I'm absolutely thrilled, and that feedback is absolutely incredible. My journey to become published wasn't straightforward at all. I had lots and lots of rejection along the way, and this is just absolutely amazing. You've just made my year. Thank you so much.
Well, massive congratulations to you on such a brilliant book.
I literally am speechless. I just can't believe that. It's just, what a surprise. That's so lovely. Thank you so much. Honestly, I couldn't have won a nicer award as well. You know, when my publishers were talking about it and they told me I've been shortlisted, I said, this is the best one I could ever have been shortlisted for, never mind win. And I've never won anything before like this. It's just amazing. I'm so happy. Thank you so much.
Wow, what a wonderful and such a happy way to conclude proceedings this evening. I'd like to say a big thank you from all of us to each of the category winners for their insightful answers and readings this evening. It has been a complete pleasure to hear from all of you. You can buy any of the titles on the shortlist for this year's awards over on the Jarrold website. There is a special East Anglian Book Awards shop on there, so do have a browse and try anything that has piqued your interest tonight. Buying the books is the best way to support the brilliant writing we've heard tonight, and to ensure that we hear more from these authors. Thank you again to all of the category judges for your hard work in making the awards happen this year, and to our supporters, the UEA Faculty of Arts and Humanities and the PACCAR Foundation. In this turbulent year, to have kept the awards running feels really important. So thank you from Jarrold to our partners at the National Centre for Writing and the Eastern Daily Press. And of course, to all of you, writers, publishers, readers, supporters, for being here to celebrate tonight. It feels fitting to end with another huge congratulations to the East Anglian Book Awards Book of the Year winner, A.M. Howell. Take care, everyone, and good night.